I said how much of what you called you was consciously chosen and how much was inherited before you were aware enough to examine it. I have distinct memory of me being in band and realizing that I didn't like band. Like, my brother was the drum major. I remember my mom being so happy about. I have a distinct memory of myself being in the band though, telling myself like, man, I hate this, even though I'm doing it. And I think everyone else knew. I think everyone else knew that like this man doesn't really want to be here. I never progressed at the instrument. Maybe a little bit. I tried sometimes. There was actually one time the band director like called, it's not called me out, but it's called like shaking the tree, and he told everybody to play their part, individual instruments and stuff. And I remember stopping maybe like 0.5 seconds in. And I think everyone, granted I did not know it, but everyone was like, oh, it's because he didn't know. But it was like, because I had at that point had enough like telling myself, you know, I hate it here, but still being here. And I'm actually hanging out with people who, they weren't good people, you know what I'm saying? They were not good people by any means. And despite committing to destructive ways, we talked about spiritual alignment practices, meditation. We talked about God. I mean, our mothers were black women who grew up in church and who were active in church. So we knew things about God. We talked about God. We questioned things about God. So there was never not a moment I did not know God. On the band trips, when you would be riding on the bus on the way back and all that, it was kind of used as a bonding tool when we ran out of songs that, like, because everybody didn't know Adorn by Miguel. You get what I'm saying? So, you know, we eventually end up, I don't know, tapping on the seats or something and making a song, and then it eventually ended up to a gospel song or some way, somehow. We knew that we knew God, and that's that seed that I'm talking about. We were very conscious and aware of the fact that the ways we were committed to were destructive and that we knew better. That's the seed that I'm talking about. I go across the world and tell people knowing and doing is two different things. The seed is knowing. Sorry guys, I had a package. And I was telling you guys that we talked about church, God, consciousness, and awareness, and things that I now understand that you'd only notice if you thought about thinking. Do you get what I'm saying? I think what they call it is metacognition. I call it meta-perceptual cognitivity. Like, that's like a superhero name for it. When I start like writing animes and stuff, I'd be like, man, this guy can like think about thinking to the point in which like he can, neither here nor there. But they call it metacognition, is where you can think about thinking. And I started to notice that, like, I started to reflect and, you know, really notice that we would only know these things if we thought about thinking, and in the way that we were committed to those destructive ways and how meticulous those destructive ways were. Man, you'd only be able to do that if you thought about thinking. And so that then let me, I mean, through like deep tunnels of philosophy, psychology, like I said, I did not walk into Christianity and saying, this is the answer, the sole answer. In fact, I grew up, I don't really remember, I think my grandma was a pastor, but neither here nor there. I know for a fact she was a pastor, but my grandmother was a pastor, and my mother like grew up in the church. Like, we were, I mean, I've been through so many different churches, but like in my high school years, we were committed to a church in which we were there almost every Wednesday, Tuesday, whatever, choir practice, Bible study, blah, 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 this, there. We were always there. So I grew up in church, still not, I wouldn't say not accepting it, but like not communicating in the Christian language, all right? Not telling myself that this was only by the grace of God, and not understanding that fully. I tried many different avenues, and that was the seed though. You know, it's important that you don't take that seed and you try to commit to destructive ways with it. It's important that you utilize this seed to get closer to God, because it is by the grace of God that you have this seed. Do you understand me? What I now know as gaining one's definition came from my inherited understanding, but further explored by connecting that consciousness and awareness I gained from those practices that I spoke of. Plus being poor. That's a good note. I'm glad I wrote that. I like underlined it. Plus being poor. Being poor will make you metacognitive. I think I said that right. Being poor will make you metacognitive. It will make you think about thinking. I don't know about anyone else, but I grew up in a house with a house of 5 siblings, me included. So 4 other siblings and my mom, so 5 other people. And when we bought a 2-liter soda, it was important for me to remember that when you put ice in the cup, the drink, you get less drink because it's going to water it down and the ice fills up. You know what I'm saying? So I would like not put the ice in the cup, pour the soda, just to see how much it affected the soda. Because like psychologically, I would, if I put the ice in first, I would just douse it with soda, you know, because I see that it's getting filled up fast. I'm like, oh, now half the bottle's gone. You know what I'm saying? So I like filled it up and said, all right, that's a reasonable amount. This is at a very young age. I'd say that's a very reasonable amount to drink, and have some for the others. Now, I'm not gonna say which sibling, but I do know that wasn't the thought for every other sibling. So I, like, at a very young age, like I said, knew thinking was a thing.